Welcome to Create Love with Carrie Margaret. I'm here to help you find and create the story of you, your authenticity, your love, your life. We live in a shifting culture where men and women don't know how to act, to find authentic self-expression, connection, and love. Let's remove the fear around expressing femininity and masculinity and come to a greater understanding of each other and build connection based on authenticity and attraction and being a team instead of adversaries. There's room for every type of life story and love story. You get to be the hero of your own story. Let me walk with you to create understanding, face fears, deconstruct attraction and passion, heal old wounds and grief, and show up as the person, lover, partner, and friend that you are here to be. Hello, this is Carrie from Create Love. And today I'm going to do a solo episode on boundaries and eroticism, and why boundaries are super hot. So this came in from the last episode. It was a fun interview with Danielle Nonog, a former stripper and a dating coach, that we went into ins and outs of attraction and eroticism and vulnerability and in the stripping world, and what people look for when what they're looking for when they go into a strip club. And it felt really important to talk about boundaries, both because they're such an important part of what makes somebody really attractive and really hot, and to their partner, to the world. And also because boundaries are the space where we really take care of us. So while the lead in here is that boundaries are hot, they're also nourishing. And isn't it amazing that things can be nourishing and loving and warm and hot at the same time? And boundaries are what allows us to have a relationship with others and a relationship with the world that works for us. And it's also something that culturally people have big challenges with. How to even know what a boundary is, how to realize what their boundaries are, how to speak their boundaries in a way that is kind and thoughtful, how to do the dance with another person with their boundaries. These are all areas that, in general, both men and women, there's large amounts of uncomfortability. So boundaries are a space that people really have a challenge with. They have a challenge with how to communicate what their boundaries are. There's not a lot of really great models culturally, and a lot of people have a lot of fear, whether it's, from the female side, there are a lot of biological, like animal type instincts that cause women to be more pleasing. And there are certain instincts that cause men to be aware of things like status and respect. And a lot of that within those frames, both women and men will have challenges in clearly stating their boundaries, because they instinctually don't want to deal with any kind of cultural fallout, or, if we think about tribe kind of mentality, we're not that it wasn't that far long ago, evolutionary, that we were in tribes. People are scared of that communication of boundaries for social consequences of what it might feel like to be kicked out or removed from their tribe, and there's not a lot of conscious examples of it. And it is where beautiful eroticism and life force energy and nourishment and joy around life live. Because we have to be able to take care of ourselves in order to feel the most alive. Now, boundaries are sometimes, our internal boundaries, like what do we need to take care of ourselves? How much sleep do we need? What time do we need to go to sleep? And in eroticism, in a relationship, that can be like, at what time can I no longer like engage with my partner? At what time at night do I lose all my energy and not have the space for that? And there are kind ways to communicate that in a way that doesn't shut your partner down or cause your partner to feel rejected. And that's just an example of sleeping. It is the same way with what do I actually, what are my boundaries in terms of what is nourishing to me in terms of the foods that I eat, or other inputs, or like the people that I'm around, or the kinds of thoughts, the kinds of environments that I let around me. All of these things are our interaction with our environment. And a boundary is very much like our skin. It is this space that's, it's this permeable space that protects us. Like, things can still come in and out of the pores of our skin, and our skin in just general, like, protects our whole organism, right? And one of the reasons that boundaries are so hot and attractive is eroticism is actually something that's been like studied by many people. And there is this erotic formula. Actually, I pulled it up right before the video. This is what I'm referring to, comes out of The Erotic Mind, which is in a beautiful book about eroticism. And in the erotic formula, or the erotic equation, it talks about how attraction plus obstacles equals excitement. So boundaries are going to form a natural obstacle, to create excitement and erotic energy in a relationship, because there is the attraction of the person that is, but without the obstacle can be completely healthy obstacle. Sometimes in certain circles, they'll talk about like the obstacles. That's why affairs are so hot, because there's an obstacle. They're like, that person's married. They're not really supposed to be in an outside extramarital affair. And then that attraction like just seems to build up more excitement because it is forbidden, right? And I just use that as one example. I think that as we move more and more into conscious spaces, there's just no need to have things like affairs, because we can have those conversations and change the model of our relationship, or transition relationships, or my preference is always that two people stay together, especially in the cases of families. Anyways, back to boundaries. So when we have boundaries to take care of ourselves, we naturally are going to become much more attractive, because it's creating that natural obstacle for our partner to connect with us erotically, which creates more excitement. Another beautiful way within just, a healthy relationship to create more of that erotic energy is through growth. So when somebody is very, very focused in growth, they're always going to be changing and evolving into a new person. And that creates a level of obstacle and challenge as well, because the other partner, it's not totally certain how things are going to change and evolve. There is the obstacle of that person's boundaries and that person's growth. And that is a seed for so much excitement and erotic energy in life. This feels super important because in the space of everywhere from dating to long-term relationship, there's so many people that experience things where they're not really having their needs met, feeling honored, with women feeling cherished, with men feeling respected, because of boundaries issues. And really, relationship is a dance between each other's boundaries. And so in the beginning stages of dating, that might look like the epidemic of situationships that are kind of like out there in the world. Now that apps are out there and there's so many options, and it seems like there's always another attractive person that somebody can meet. And that causes, culturally, in my point of view, frequently like less valuing of the individual, more of this kind of swiping sense, and all of that has created more of these kind of situationships. And within situationships, people are generally communicating boundaries very well. I'm not talking, when I bring up situationship, I'm not talking about something like a healthy negotiated relationship where it's super clear what each of you want out of the situation and it's mutually beneficial to both. I'm talking about more things where one person is kind of mute on what they want, and the other person just comes and goes, and that can happen on both sides. It does, in my opinion, does tend to happen a bit more where the woman is on the side of the waiting because of early attachment bias. That happens, especially like technically a situationship is somebody where people are having intercourse sex. So that tends to happen with women. They have an early attachment bias and tend to attach a bit more than men do, just biologically. It's, it has to do with things like oxytocin in our bodies, and it is a beautiful thing. And in a situation like situationship, people can feel very hurt and get kind of tied up in something for a long period of time that's actually not serving them in what they want. And, this boundaries issue with men happens as well, with men not really honoring or knowing exactly what they want. And maybe I tend to notice this more, and men not being completely clear, being completely honest about their feelings about a woman, and kind of being in this like friendship zone space where they're like very emotionally attached to a woman and sometimes not even aware or, like cognizant of their own emotional boundaries, and having the healthy conversations that would help them move through to either something beautiful with that woman or something beautiful with another woman. And just like the women in situationships, if they felt a little bit more comfortable in boundaries, then they would be able to move through these things with conversations as well. And we're all in practice mode related to this, related to conversations around boundaries. And that's an example in dating. And then like as relationships progress, a lot of times we'll notice things like fallout in sexual intimacy and connection in that way in a relationship, and frequently emotionally as well. And a lot of times it has to do with boundaries and not actually being able to identify what our actual needs are. There's all this verbiage or all these things about like, oh, don't be needy. People are supposed to have needs, and having needs does not make somebody needy. Actually, in general, I think that people sometimes show up a little bit more like quote unquote needy because it's been a long time since they have felt their needs met. And so it creates this kind of energy of like strong desire to meet the particular need. So as people can step into really identifying with themselves, like what feels good, what doesn't feel good to them, and what's nourishing to them, and what their needs are, then they can communicate that through boundaries. And also they can communicate that more in their erotic communication as well, because sometimes people will just like fall away and avoid and go into less attractive mode. It's not, attractive just to shut somebody down and avoid them. It's okay if that's been a pattern. All of these things, these patterns that we have, are things that we get the chance to move through and grow through and evolve. we all get the chance to grow. So I always want you to feel as you're listening to me that this is a no shame and no judgment zone. So in these long-term relationships, what happens is when people aren't clear about their boundaries, then, you know, the eroticism does fall away. And I think that part of that is like when there's kind of it's not clear, then we're not having the right balance of like attraction, which is like the connection, and then the obstacle of the boundary. So the attraction and the attraction formula is that beautiful connection. And then the obstacle is the boundary that allows that person to be in themselves and to grow and to have themselves be taken care of. And that's super hot. I mean, one of the reasons that bad girls or bad boys tend to be kind of attractive in movies and all these spaces, or if you think back to younger years, like the bad girl or the bad boy, is because they have these really actually rigid boundaries. I wouldn't say super healthy boundaries, but these kind of rigid boundaries. It's the obstacle. I think the most attractive combination is the super warm, attractive, connecting person with the boundaries, keeping their space. So all of this is boundaries are going to give you, you know, just this great formula for lifelong attraction. You know, everything from going through puberty all the way through to the end of your life, and help you dance in an erotic dance in a much more attractive way and have your needs met and enjoy all of it. So in sum, boundaries are about nourishing yourself. They're about taking care of yourself. They're about being sexy. They're about being hot. They're about being connected to yourself so that you can be in that erotic dance. Thank you so much for listening to Create Love. Sending you all so much love. This is Carrie Margaret.